I never imagined my 35th birthday would mark the beginning of the cruelest betrayal of my life. That morning, I was humming in the kitchen of the old wooden house on Willow Street, the one I had spent 5 years restoring from a crumbling shell, into a place that breathed love and history. Every brick on the exposed walls had been scrubbed by hand, every window pane replaced one by one. I had poured my soul into the garden out back, planting rows of lavender that came alive every summer in bursts of purple. This wasn't just a house. It was my sanctuary, my pride, my heart. The party was simple, intimate, just a few family members. My parents, my older brother Nathan, a couple of uncles, and Ivy, my cousin, always perfectly polished in a cocktail dress and radiant smile, even when the occasion called for cozy flannel and bare feet. It didn't matter. I was just grateful to be surrounded by people I loved. "Camille, open your gift." "This one's really special," my mom said, holding out a silver envelope wrapped with a red ribbon like it was a treasure. I smiled, not suspecting anything. The room buzzed with light-hearted conversation, the sweet scent of vanilla cake still lingering in the air. I slid the ribbon off gently, peeled open the shiny wrap, and pulled out the contents. My eyes scanned the bold black letters, and the warmth drained from my face. Eviction notice, the room tilted. My breath caught in my throat. "What is this?" I whispered, barely recognizing my own voice. I looked around. My father's gaze dropped to the floor. My mother blinked rapidly, refusing to meet my eyes. Nathan took a step back. And Ivy? She smiled, not the gentle smile she wore when passing around holiday cookies or complimenting my garden. No, this was sharp, cold. The smile of someone who had been waiting for this exact moment. "Camille," my mother began, her voice brittle like dry leaves. "I know today isn't the ideal time, but it's time we were honest." "Honest?" I shot to my feet, the chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "This is my house. I restored every inch of it. I've lived here, worked here, bled for this place." "You can't just— It was never legally yours," Ivy interrupted, setting her wine glass down like she was preparing for a business pitch. "The deed is still in your aunt and uncle's name. You knew that." My mind spun. "You knew. You all knew. And you planned this, today?" "It's a hot market," Ivy said, brushing her silk dress smooth. "This property could go for millions. We're just helping the family make a smart move." I stared at her, stunned. "So this is my birthday gift? An eviction notice wrapped in ribbon?" Silence. "You have 45 days, my mother said softly. "We'll help you with moving costs if you need." I stepped back. "I don't need your help," I said, my voice breaking. "I need the truth." But no one spoke. The room, once filled with laughter, now echoed with betrayal. I turned toward the front door, heart pounding. "Get out," I whispered. "Camille," I said, "get out." They left one by one. No one looked back, except Ivy. She paused, her eyes glinting like ice. "You're fighting a battle you can't win," she said coolly. "Don't let emotions cloud your judgment." The door clicked shut, and I stood there, holding the eviction notice in trembling hands, knowing one thing for certain: Ivy had no idea who she was dealing with. The silence after they left felt suffocating. I stood frozen in the middle of the living room, the eviction notice still clutched in my hand like it was burning through my skin. The warmth from the morning, the laughter, the scent of cake, the flicker of candles had all vanished, replaced by a hollow coldness I couldn't shake. I should have cried. Should have screamed. But all I felt was suspicion. Ivy. Every detail of her behavior over the past year now played back in my mind like puzzle pieces finally falling into place. Her subtle questions about the house value, her random curious comments about zoning and property taxes. Her gaze, lingering on the walls I restored, the garden I planted. She'd been watching, plotting, and I'd mistaken it for admiration. I turned slowly and walked to the armchair by the window, the sun casting a soft orange hue across the wooden floors. I dropped the envelope on the coffee table and stared at it like it might grow teeth and bite. Then I reached for my phone and dialed the one person who had never once doubted me. Emma, my best friend since college. The one who pulled me through all-nighters, breakups, and even the time I accidentally painted the wrong side of the porch for a week straight. She picked up after 3 rings. "Camille?" "No small talk," I said. "I need you here. Bring your laptop, and if you still have that old folder of renovation permits, bring those too." There was a pause. Then, "On my way." Less than an hour later, Emma arrived. Hair in a messy bun, backpack slung over her shoulder, and eyes scanning me like a nurse checking vitals. She said nothing, just wrapped her arms around me for 3 seconds, then pulled out her laptop and got to work. Her folders were a thing of beauty, organized, color-coded, and cross-referenced. She pulled up every permit, blueprint, and email related to the renovation. "Good thing I archived all this," she said, sliding the laptop toward me. I stared at the screen. It was all there. Every nail I hammered, every wall I stripped, every permit. Legal, documented, backed up. "Ivy told my parents I did unpermitted renovations," I muttered. "That I was a legal risk, but she never let me see the paperwork she showed them." Emma narrowed her eyes. "You think she forged them?" "I think she's executing a much bigger plan," I said, my voice low. That night, I texted Nathan, my brother. We hadn't been close in years, especially after he got married and started spending holidays on his wife's side, but I still believed if there was one person in the family who might have a conscience left, it was him. "Me. I need to see you. Urgently. Nathan. Tomorrow. 8 a.m. Cornerstone Cafe." I stared at the screen long after the reply came in. This wasn't just a family misunderstanding anymore. This was something deeper, more deliberate, and I wasn't about to sit back and let them bulldoze my life. Not without a fight. The next morning, I arrived at Cornerstone Cafe 10 minutes early. I sat by the window, cupping a steaming mug of chamomile tea in both hands, trying to keep them from trembling. The usually comforting aroma of roasted coffee beans and fresh pastries did nothing to ease the tension that had taken root in my chest. When Nathan finally walked in, he looked tired. Not just from lack of sleep, but in a way that told me he had been carrying something heavy. Too heavy, for too long. He gave me a brief nod and slid into the seat across from me. "Camille." I didn't waste time. "You knew about the eviction, didn't you?" He hesitated. That was all the answer I needed. 2 weeks ago, he finally admitted, eyes glued to the tabletop. "Mom and Dad told me Ivy brought them some documents. She said you'd been doing illegal work on the house. No permits, no inspections. They panicked." I leaned in. "And you believed her?" He sighed. "I wanted to believe you, Camille. But she had papers. Official looking. Ones. Signed, stamped. It looked real." I slid a folder across the table, Emma's neatly compiled file, filled with scanned copies of every approved permit, construction license, and city inspection from the last 5 years. "These are my real documents. Every single renovation I did was permitted and signed off by the city." Nathan opened the folder, flipping through the pages. With each sheet, the color drained from his face. "She lied to me too," he whispered. "She didn't just lie, Nathan," I said, my voice shaking. "I think she forged legal documents, and I think she's working with someone who wants this house off the map." He blinked. Who? Max Harper, I said. Real estate developer. Ring any bells? Nathan nodded slowly. Dad mentioned him once. Said Ivy was seeing a guy in development. Didn't think anything of it at the time. Well, I did some digging. Max is one of the co-founders of a firm called Harper & Stone. Their name showed up on a planning document for a new luxury condo development, and the address listed on that blueprint, I swallowed hard, was mine. 197 Willow Street. Nathan sat back like he'd just been punched in the gut. They've already planned the build? Behind everyone's back, I said. And worse, Marcus Bell, a contact from the city's planning office, recognized the blueprint. Said he saw it at a closed-door meeting, which means Ivy's been feeding false documents to the city, too. Nathan rubbed his face, ashamed. Camille, I swear I didn't know. I thought maybe this was just about money, but this is fraud. This is criminal. I leaned in. Then help me expose it. He looked up, and for the first time in years, I saw the brother I used to trust. He gave a firm nod. Whatever you need. I'm with you. Back at home, Emma and I got to work. We reached out to Chloe, an old classmate of Emma's who worked in the city's land records office. She agreed to meet us that evening. If Ivy thought I was going to back down, she clearly didn't know me at all. Because this wasn't just about protecting a house anymore. It was about exposing the lie. And the people who built their future on it. Later that evening, the library was unusually quiet, even for a Wednesday. Emma and I sat at a tucked-away corner table as Chloe, dressed in business casual and carrying a thick manila file, joined us with a tired smile and a cup of coffee. Sorry for the wait, she said, pulling out a folder and flipping it open. I found the complaint Ivy supposedly submitted, claiming your neighbors were upset about noise, unlicensed work, and safety violations. She laid the document on the table. I scanned it quickly, then looked up. And Chloe's lips pressed into a thin line. There's no official case number, no timestamp in the city system. And the name listed as the complainant, Martin Doyle, doesn't match any of the registered residents on Willow Street. I cross-checked. Emma leaned in, eyes wide. So, it's fake? It appears so, Chloe said. It's a document submitted, yes, but not one that passed through our official filing system, which means someone either forged it or used an inside connection to bypass the verification process. A cold shiver ran down my spine. Ivy didn't just lie to my parents, she lied to the city. Emma snapped pictures of every page, her hands steady, but her jaw clenched. This isn't just shady, it's criminal. I nodded, heart pounding. She's setting me up to lose the house, legally, by sabotaging the permits I already have on record. I looked down at the document again, the name Martin Doyle, glaring up at me like an insult. Every detail had been designed to paint me as negligent, even dangerous. But Chloe wasn't finished. I looked into something else too, she said, lowering her voice. A developer named Harper & Stone submitted a petition for a rezoning project last month. Their proposed project name? She pulled out another sheet and laid it on top. Willow Heights, Luxury Residential Complex. Proposed location, 197 Willow. Street my breath caught. That was my address. Emma swore under her breath. They've already picked the name? They're in deep, I said, anger burning under my skin. They've planned everything. Demolition, design, construction, all based on the assumption that I'll be out of the picture, Chloe nodded. If they can get your house declared non-compliant, or claim it's abandoned or unsafe, they can fast-track it. My fists clenched in my lap. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a hostile takeover. I thanked Chloe, promising to keep her anonymous if needed. We left the library just as twilight fell. the streets bathed in a soft golden haze. Willow Street looked peaceful as ever, the historic district sign glowing faintly near the corner. But now, every shadow felt like a warning, every silence a strategy. When we returned to my house, I paused at the gate. The same gate I'd painted myself, the same fence my grandmother once leaned on to wave to neighbors. I looked up at the wooden beams of my porch and whispered more, to myself than anyone. If Ivy wants a war, she's about to get one. Emma stood beside me, resolute. Then let's fight, and let's win. A new kind of fire had lit inside me, hotter than fear, stronger than grief. The fight to save my home had just turned into a mission to uncover every lie they buried beneath the foundation of their greed. The next morning, the air was crisp with a faint drizzle as Emma and I headed back into the city, a thick folder of documents clutched between us like a fragile truth we couldn't afford to drop. Our first stop was Nathan's place. From there, he drove us to meet one of his contacts, Marcus Bell, a planning official in the city development office. Marcus was cautious but not unkind. After reviewing the forged complaint and Harper & Stone's rezoning plans, his expression turned increasingly grim. "I've seen this blueprint before," he muttered, flipping through the documents. "It came up in a closed-door briefing. Last month, someone from Harper & Stone presented it as part of their Q3 redevelopment portfolio. Do you remember the developer's name?" I asked, my voice tight. Marcus typed a few quick notes on his keyboard, then turned the monitor toward us. There it was, in bold Harper & Stone Development Group proposed site. 197 Willow Street project. Willow Heights. 18-unit luxury. Residential complex. Emma inhaled sharply beside me. "That's my home," I said quietly. Marcus continued. "There's also a land survey form in their file, signed by your parents. That gave them initial clearance to move forward." My stomach twisted. My parents never told me about signing anything. "Would you like our legal department to verify the signatures?" Marcus offered. "Yes," I replied immediately. "As soon as possible." Back in the car, my head throbbed. I stared at my phone, thumb hovering over a message draft to my mother. But I couldn't bring myself to hit send. Not yet. Not until I had proof. I needed certainty. Something irrefutable. That night, Emma stayed over, like we were in college again, plotting study strategies before a brutal final. Only this time, we were strategizing for a war. We sat beside the fireplace, combing through every page of the land survey, every inch of the blueprint. Emma paused, pointing to a red stamp at the bottom of one page. "Look at this," she said. "The notary seal." I leaned in. "Notary Public, Elizabeth Sterling." Sterling. I blinked. "That's Ivy's last name." Emma's eyes widened. Could be her mother? She opened her laptop, fingers flying over the keys. "Here we go," she said after a few minutes. Elizabeth Sterling, Ivy's biological mother, used to be a certified notary, retired 2 years ago. I sat up straight. "Wait, the document was dated 3 weeks ago. If she notarized it after retiring, that's illegal," Emma said. "It's falsifying a notarized document. That's a felony." I leaned back in my chair, the firelight dancing across the ceiling. Everything was unraveling, and Ivy had woven every thread. My home wasn't just at risk because of a shady deal. It was being attacked with forged signatures, illegal seals, and a plan built on deception. The next morning, I was about to leave to meet Marcus again, when I froze in my tracks. My windshield had been shattered. A rock lay on the driver's seat, surrounded by broken glass. Taped to it was a crumpled slip of paper. "Back off while you still can." My heart pounded. I scanned the street. Empty. Silent. This wasn't just about legal tricks anymore. Someone wanted me scared. Gone. But if they thought a broken windshield would stop me, they clearly had no idea who I was. The police arrived within 30 minutes. They took the rock, the note, and photos of the damage while I stood on the curb gripping my coat tighter, trying not to let the fear show. One officer advised I install security cameras immediately and report any further incidents. I nodded, thanking him, but deep down I knew. This wasn't random. This was Ivy's warning shot. When Emma and Nathan arrived shortly after, I showed them the note. Nathan's jaw clenched as he picked up the paper bag holding the rock. "They've crossed the line," he muttered. "This isn't just business. It's intimidation." 3 days later, an email from Marcus landed in my inbox with the subject line, "Signature verification results." I opened it, my hands shaking. After comparing the submitted land survey signatures with the original property records and tax documents, we confirm the signatures of Mr. and Mrs. Rickman are forged. I exhaled sharply. It was our first solid piece of proof. Emma called. Immediately. "Camille, this is it. We've got them." That night we sat in my kitchen, me, Emma, and Nathan, mapping out the strategy like generals before a battle. Our goal was clear: gather every shred of evidence, fake documents, forged notarizations, proof of Ivy's ties to Max Harper, and the demolition plans. "We need to stop them before they break ground," Emma said. "If the house gets torn down, they win, no matter what we prove." "I agree," Nathan added, "but we need more firepower." Emma thought for a moment. "Leela, she works at the Historical Preservation Office. If your house qualifies for protected status, they can't touch it without city approval. They was our best shot at buying time and stopping demolition cold." Just then, the doorbell rang. I walked to the porch slowly, heart thudding. No delivery truck, no footsteps. Just a cardboard box sitting quietly on the doormat. No return address, no markings. I bent down, lifted the lid, and froze. Inside were full-color photographs, dozens of them. Every corner of my home, my living room, the hallway, my grandmother's old wooden staircase, even the bedroom window I had just repainted last week. All of them marked with red X's. No note, no explanation, but none was needed. I turned to Nathan, eyes wide. "They've been inside." He grabbed the box, scanning the photos. "No way, you locked up, right?" "Of course I did." "Then they have a key," he said grimly. "Probably got it from Mom." My stomach turned. "You think she gave it to Ivy?" "She might have asked to borrow it, to measure for the engagement party or something." He pulled out his phone and stepped outside. I couldn't hear the call, but I saw the way his expression changed, jaw tightening, lips flattening. When he returned, his face was pale. "She gave Ivy the key 2 days ago." The betrayal stung like fresh salt in an old wound. I turned to the window, staring out at the backyard garden where the lavender had started to fade in the fall breeze. This was no longer just a legal battle. This was war, and Ivy had made it personal. Turned back to Emma and Nathan, voice steady but steely. "We move tonight. No more waiting. No more hoping they'll back off. We don't just defend this house. We expose everything." The campaign had begun, and I was done playing nice. 2 days after the break-in, I found myself sitting across from Sarah Holden, a seasoned attorney with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. She had helped me once, years ago, with zoning paperwork when I first started restoring the house. But now, she was more than a legal advisor. She was my ally. Sarah flipped through every document we brought: Marcus's signature verification, the forged notary seal, the threatening note, and the photographs with red X's. Her expression grew darker with every page. "This isn't just a family dispute," she said flatly. "This is an orchestrated fraud operation. Forged documents, unauthorized access, intimidation, If we can prove Ivy and Max colluded for personal gain, you won't just keep your home. You could take them both to court. I nodded, but deep down, I knew something else. A quiet lawsuit wouldn't be enough. They needed to be stopped publicly, on their own stage. Because Ivy didn't just want my house. She wanted to humiliate me, erase me, and rise in the spotlight she stole. I wanted that spotlight turned into a mirror. Then, as if fate heard my thoughts, my phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. Camille, I know what Ivy has done. Meet me at Bean and Birch, 5 p.m. It was signed, Lena Harper, Max's younger sister. I'd only met Lena a handful of times at Ivy's holiday parties. She had always seemed quiet, distant, never quite fitting into the glossy circle Ivy curated. I had no idea what she wanted now, but my gut told me to go. At 5 p.m. sharp, I walked into Bean and Birch. The cafe buzzed with soft jazz and the clinking of coffee cups. In a corner booth, Lena sat with a gray coat draped over her shoulders, her face pale but determined. She slid a USB drive across the table. This has everything, she said, her voice calm. Blueprints, emails, planning notes, internal conversations between Max and Ivy. They're not just redeveloping, they're erasing your house, your name, your presence. I stared at the small flash drive like it was gold. Why are you helping me? I asked, my voice low. Because I used to believe in what our company stood for, she said, eyes burning. But Max and Ivy have turned it into a machine, one that chews people up for profit, and I won't be part of it anymore. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a heavy envelope. This is the guest list for Ivy's engagement party at the Bellevue Grand. You're not on it, of course. I smiled bitterly. She's debuting Max to our family investors that night, Lena continued. That's when they plan to announce the new development, your house, as their next success story. I clenched my jaw. She wants to celebrate my erasure in front of the people I once called family. Lena nodded. But I kept one extra invitation. I was in charge of press access. You can use it. No one will question you. She slid the invitation across the table. Blank, untouched, waiting. I picked it up slowly. For the first time in weeks, my heart felt steady. This wasn't just an opportunity to defend myself. It was my chance to shine the light of truth where Ivy thought no one would dare look. And this time, I wasn't going in alone. The night of the engagement party arrived with the crisp elegance of early winter. I stood outside the Bellevue Grand Hotel, dressed in a simple black gown and my grandmother's pearl necklace, a quiet symbol of everything I had loved and lost in that house. The golden light from chandeliers spilled through the tall glass windows, casting a warm glow over a ballroom filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and lies. I stepped through the doors, invitation in hand, heart pounding, with purpose. Inside, Ivy floated through the room like a queen, draped in shimmering white, her hand proudly looped through Max's arm. She was radiant, untouchable. And yet, the moment her eyes found me, her glow dimmed. She didn't expect me to show. Camille, she greeted with a frozen smile. I didn't think you'd be... Save it, I said, cutting her off. I held up the blank invitation Lena had given me. Wouldn't miss this celebration for the world. I moved past her before she could speak again, walking straight to the front of the room. I found the mic sitting beside the champagne tower, picked up a glass, and gently tapped the rim. The soft chime echoed through the ballroom. If I could have everyone's attention, I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline thrumming in my veins. Before dinner begins, I'd like to share a story. It's not a toast, it's the truth. The music stopped. Guests turned, murmurs fading, into silence, All eyes on me. Some of you know me as Ivy's cousin. Others may not know me at all. But you've probably heard about the project Ivy and Max are debuting tonight. The one they claim will revitalize a corner of the historic district. I clicked the remote in my hand. Behind me, the large screen lit up. The first image, a blueprint for Willow Heights, stamped with the address, 197 Willow Street. A wave of whispers rippled through the room. "That's my home," I said. "The one I restored with my bare hands. The one I was forced to leave because of an eviction notice, based on lies." I advanced the slides. They showed side-by-side comparisons of the real land permits and the forged ones Ivy had submitted. The notary stamp from her mother, Elizabeth Sterling, used illegally. The complaint letter from a non-existent neighbor. And finally, an audio recording. Ivy's voice cold and clear through the speakers. "Let them think Camille's breaking the law. Once the house loses protection, we can buy it for nothing. After the engagement party, it's all ours." Stunned silence followed. Then Max's voice chimed in from the recording. I wiped the internal files. "No one can trace this back." Gasps erupted across the room. Max stepped forward, trying to grab the mic. "This is slander." But before he could reach me, a new voice cut through the chaos. "I sent the recording," said Lena, stepping out. From the crowd, her face resolute. "Because I refuse to let my brother and Ivy destroy people for profit." The room burst into a wave of stunned murmurs. Ivy's face had gone pale. Max's jaw dropped as if he had never truly seen his sister, until now. I turned back to the screen. "This isn't just about a house. It's about integrity, about choosing truth over power." Then came the final blow. 2 plainclothes officers stepped into the room and approached Ivy. "Miss Sterling," one said calmly, "you are under investigation for document forgery and conspiracy to commit fraud. We ask for your cooperation." And, just like that, her empire of lies began to fall, one truth at a time. The ballroom remained frozen in disbelief. Ivy stood stiffly, lips trembling, as the officers gently guided her away from the spotlight she had so carefully crafted. Max didn't speak. He didn't move. He just stood there, stunned, his hand no longer touching hers. The crowd of investors, family friends, and real estate partners began to murmur louder, exchanging glances filled with discomfort, betrayal, and thinly veiled outrage. Randall Morris, one of Harper & Stone's lead investors, stepped forward and slammed a project folder onto a nearby table. "Harper & Stone has lost all credibility with me," he said coldly. "This deal is dead." Sarah stepped up beside me, her voice low. "You did it, Camille. Everything's in the hands of the authorities now." I nodded, but before I could step away from the center of the room, I saw them. My parents. They had arrived late and had unknowingly walked into the final act of their daughter's public reckoning. My mother's face was pale, her expression unreadable. My father stood next to her, as still as stone. I took a slow breath and approached them. "I'm sorry I had to do this publicly," I said softly. But no one listened when I said something was wrong. And without the truth, I would have always been seen as the problem. My mother's eyes welled with tears. "Camille, we had no idea. Ivy showed us papers. She was so convincing, and we thought..." Her voice cracked. "We're so sorry." I reached out and gently squeezed her hand. There were no grand reunions, no warm embrace. But in that moment, I felt something. Real remorse. Maybe even the beginning of understanding. We left the hotel soon after. Outside, the crisp night air wrapped around me like a long-awaited exhale. Sarah handed me a slim folder as we walked down the steps. "The court will begin reviewing everything next week," she said. "With the level of evidence we've gathered, Your win is almost certain. Behind us, the echoes of broken deals and shattered reputations lingered inside that ballroom. But in my chest, I felt something different. A quiet, powerful calm. Lena walked beside me, her expression solemn but steady. "Thank you for standing up," she said, "for more than just yourself." I glanced at her and smiled. "No, thank you for helping me pull the curtain back." She paused, then added gently, "Max is stepping down, and I'm working with a preservation group now. We want to start something new, something built on protecting what matters." A few days later, back on Willow Street, I stood on the front porch of my house, watching the breeze ripple through the now silent garden beds. The lavender had withered for the season, but I knew it would bloom again. This place wasn't just where I lived. It was where I fought, where I reclaimed everything they tried to take from me. And despite everything, despite the betrayal, the forged documents, and the threats, I was still standing. Not bitter, not broken, but whole. 6 weeks after that unforgettable night at the Bellevue Grand, spring finally returned to Willow Street. The bare branches lining the sidewalks had begun to bud with soft green leaves, and the scent of lilacs from my neighbor's garden drifted on the breeze. Life, as it tends to do, was quietly rebuilding itself. One season, one breath, one morning at a time. And so was I. The house still stood, solid and unchanged, despite everything they tried to do. The white fence was newly painted, the garden, beds freshly turned, not for resale, not for show, but for living. Emma stopped by almost every morning with coffee and blueprints, her head full of renovation ideas. "We're keeping the soul," she'd always say, tapping the table with her pen. But adding a little armor, Nathan brought his kids on weekends, helping plant asters along the walkway. His wife, once distant, now brought lemonade and stories, slowly stitching bonds that had long frayed. And Lena had become family in a way I never expected. After officially resigning from Harper & Stone, she helped launch a local preservation fund, working with a small team to protect historic homes across the district. "This house isn't just a memory," she told me one afternoon as we inspected the roof. "It's a story worth preserving, and we want to start here." She reached into her tote bag and handed me a bronze plaque. "The Rickman House, a living legacy of Willow Street." I traced the words with my fingertips, speechless. No ceremony, no fanfare, just truth. Earned and honored. Then, one quiet morning, someone I never expected to see appeared at my front gate. Max Harper. No polished suit, no designer watch. Just a man in jeans and a windbreaker, standing there like someone who had finally run out of defenses. "I'm not here to apologize," he said, voice flat. "I know sorry doesn't undo anything." I didn't respond. "But Lena told me what you're building. I want to support it. Financially. Quietly, if you'll allow it." I studied him for a long moment. "Not because I forgive you," I said finally, "but because starting over means starting from zero. No shortcuts." He nodded, accepting that with a humility I never thought he had. We shook hands, and for the first time in months, I felt a weight lift. Not because Max had changed, but because I was no longer chained to bitterness. As for Ivy, the press moved on quickly after she accepted a plea deal. Suspended sentence, fines, and a ban from real estate development. My family never mentioned her again. Some silences are merciful. One afternoon, my mother stopped by. She brought with her a small wooden comb from my grandmother's old box. "She used to brush my hair with this," she said quietly. "Said this place was always the heart of the family." I didn't answer. I just opened the living room window and let the afternoon light pour in. like it had when I was a child reading on the windowsill, dreaming of the life I'd someday build here. Weeks later, I hosted a backyard dinner. Nothing fancy, just string lights, wooden tables, laughter, and people who had stood beside me through the storm. Lena brought a framed photo of my grandmother smiling in front of the porch. Emma whispered, "You should make this a tradition." I smiled, raising my glass. To truth, to home, to the courage it takes to rise. And in that moment, under a sky full of stars, I finally understood. A house is wood and stone. But home is where you stand tall after everything tried to knock you down. And this was mine. Forever.